And we are going live.
Hopefully
we are live.
We are live. All
We're
right.
live. Welcome to Semi Stages of the Pages, where today we are going to talk about the famous, the one, the only House of Dragons. And you get to find out which semi stages like it and which don't. But to start with, I'm Morgan.
This is Molly.
I'm Teresa.
And
we're
welcome.
ready to have We're ready to have an amazing time. So in the chat, if we have anybody on the stream yet, we'd love to know which one of us you think likes and does not like House of Dragons, because I think that would be really kind of fun to see what people's predictions are.
All right, we have one person in the chat so far, just confirming that they can in fact both see and hear us.
Well, so this is good.
This is a great time. And it looks like Santi is here.
Hi, Santi!
Welcome, whoever, few people who are here. And yeah, I guess the first thing to do is talk about, like, if you want to share in the chat, if you liked this show or not. We always talk in Culture Club that it doesn't sort of matter if you like or don't like something. What is important is what we can learn from it. And I think that's going to be a big thing today, because we have some really differing opinions on this show.
We think, because we've never actually talked about it. So
yeah, we're saving the discussion. We're saving the discussion.
So first we're going to talk specifically about House of Dragons. We're going to get into the female characters specifically. And our focus today is going to be, did the series write strong female characters? What ways did they do that? And what ways could they have done even better? If at that point we'll turn the page and we'll talk about we have the privilege to read some first pages that were sent to us, and then we'll do the same thing with those pages. We'll do an even better if. Ladies, did that sound right? Did I miss anything?
Sounds perfect.
Great.
Nice job.
So should we just do a really basic overview of House of Dragons?
Yeah.
Okay. So House of Dragons.
House of the Dragon.
Oh, thank you. I needed that. House of the Dragon. See.
Writing the articles are important, I guess.
They are important. Yeah, actually, articles would be right? Those connection words. If anyone doesn't know. So House of the Dragon is, help me if I'm wrong, but it's a prequel to Game of Thrones, which was a very, very popular book series, and then it was turned into an HBO series that so many people watched, and it was really popular until like the last 3 episodes, at which point long-term fans kind of became a little disenchanted. So House of the Dragons is a reattempt to kind of bring the audience back in, and it kind of starts with our main character, whose name is Rhaenyra. And she is the daughter of King Viserys, who got his throne in kind of a sketchy way. He was actually at odds with like 2 other people. And the one who was kind of above him was his female cousin. Because she was a female, she was bumped out of the way, and he became heir to the throne. He had some sons, they died. And so then his first wife dies, and he only has 1 daughter. And then he eventually remarries and has some male children. But in the process, he promises the throne to his daughter, his oldest daughter, as kind of this departing love story to his wife that died in childbirth. And so, he stands by her till basically the day he dies, or does he? That kind of gets, and at the end, the son tries to say, well, I'm the man, so I'm going to take the throne, or rather those around him decide he's going to take it. He doesn't even want it. And his big sister says, no, dad gave it to me, and I'm going to claim this for women. And that's basically the series. Is there anything we want to add to that?
That was a good high level, but go, Molly.
Oh, no, you go.
No, I was just saying it was good. All you.
I was going to say, one of the things that makes it different than Game of Thrones, there's a couple of things that make it different. One is it is very much focused on this family. And 2, it tackles time very differently than Game of Thrones did. So Game of Thrones doesn't really have time skips. It happens, just keeps happening linearly. This series or the show, this season is very different in that there are some major time jumps at different points. You start with the character, I believe she's 14, and then she's 16 at one point, and ends 26. No, then she's 26, and then she's, I think, 32 or 34 or something like that. So there's multiple skipping forward in time and time cuts, which is very different than the original one. Yeah.
I think, and one of the things, as Molly was talking about the time jumps that I found really fascinating was these characters. So Rhaenyra and Alicent, who married her father, they continue to have children throughout. They are women of power, and strong women of power, and they continue to have children. And there was a wonderful, wonderful scene with Rhaenyra where she'd just given birth, and she's in the council meeting, and she, starts lactating. She's trying to prove her points. She's a powerful woman, and all the men are like, "Hey, look at that. That's gross." And it just kind of shuts her down again. And it was such an interesting play, especially for me, the final episode, and this is huge spoiler, so if you haven't watched it, please go ahead and watch it, where Rhaenyra gave birth to a stillborn baby, had to mourn, and then had to pull herself right back up again and keep going.
I will say, trigger warning for this show. This show goes hard in the paint in terms of the difficulties of childbirth and the body horrors involved. Like
multiple women die of childbirth in this series.
It does. Season. Oh, and okay. That's what we're talking about. Body horrors.
Well, and in the first episode, like, there is a problem in labor, and they make the decision to try to save the baby and not the mother.
Cesarean section. Before they have the technology for it, right?
Yeah.
And this series, remember, is based on history, and he did a lot of research. And so those scenes are very historical, and they're based on actual queens who are trying to take power, and stories that, and he'll match them up. So when you listen to interviews with him, he'll say, this was the queen, and this is, and I don't remember all the details from this season, but I found the reality of that reminded me so much of Maria Theresa, as she tried to rule and hold Austria-Hungary together and have all these children, and she was always pregnant, and she was always trying to rule, and she kept losing these wars, and people were always attacking her because she was a woman. And I was like, this is so much her story. Like, this is so true of how the problems of motherhood and the very real dangers of dying in childbirth kept women out of power for centuries.
And on top of that, women's value was in producing a ideally male heir. That was their value.
They hit on that multiple times.
That was why Viserys married Alicent, was because she was young and she would produce a male heir. And that would make her rule successful.
They complicate that, though, because even he, like, they try to marry him to this little tiny girl who's like his cousin to keep their blood pure, which also is a historical thing that you see bloodlines trying to stay pure, and you see that in the Aztec Empire, you see that quote unquote pure, but
now we know that was a huge mistake,
Egyptian.
But that's the point, right? If you go back into ancient history, like, he's making the point about why that doesn't work, and how even his main character, like even Viserys, right? He will not marry this child for two reasons. One, she's too close in his bloodline, and he knows that that's wrong. And more importantly, she's a child, and it's offensive to him.
I'm going to disagree with one thing that you said. I don't think that there is evidence in the show that he doesn't marry her because she's too closely related to him. He specifically lists that she's too young, but he doesn't list that as another reason. In fact, he betroths his two children together. He marries his daughter to his son.
Yeah, you're right. You win, for sure.
Well,
I think I heard that in an interview with Matt Smith. So
but
right.
I think the marriage of his two children together was to protect Helena, who has some sort of break in reality. What'd you say?
Prescience. She can see the future.
That could be that. It could be she has precognition or something like that. But they, as horrific as it is, that was part of the reason they married. They married the two of them together, was to keep her in the family and do.
I don't think there's evidence that that's true either. I mean, I think that is an interesting thought, but I didn't find evidence of that in the show. Nowhere in the show did they say that that's why they did that. The only evidence I saw was keeping the bloodlines pure, and the mom talking about basically she always wanted her son to be on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And the most advantageous wife potentially for that was the bloodlines pure, his own sister.
There is at least one quote this sports Teresa that I remember. Okay. Now it did come from the younger brother, and it was on the tower when they were mourning. The whole family was brought together for a mourning. Can't remember who they were mourning at that point, but everybody was there. Everybody had somebody to mourn. It was at the time that the boys' real fathers were burned and they had to hide it. Basically.
Oh yeah. It was Daemon's second wife after her failed childbirth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and she dies in childbirth, again, like we said, and she gives herself to the dragon. So we see the dragon and the fire and women's fire, and we see all that combined. And they're standing around the fire. And to Teresa's point, the younger brother, Aemond, who's not the one who marries his sister, Helena, but he says, I would happily marry her and do my duty to protect her. He says that. He said that is his duty, and he says that on the tower. And then I think that that's a fair reason, if that is his assumption about what the duty is of his brother, that would be an expectation that would be communicated.
I interpreted that as the duty of. They talk a lot about duty in this show, and they talk a lot about the duty of a husband to protect his wife. So I didn't see it as, and you might be right? My interpretation of it was I would do my duty to protect her because she would be my wife, not because marrying her as my sister would protect her. But understand your interpretation. I think that's a valid interpretation too. Can I talk about the thing?
That you don't like? Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to be straight up front. There's a lot that I didn't like in this show.
Here's the one that doesn't like the show.
It's me. Although I do think that many of the women were powerful. I don't disagree with that. But there were things in here that just didn't work for me. And probably the number one biggest thing that I had a hard time with is that in this show, I think they have a hard task for them because they have a setting in which the characters in this setting have different morals, ethics, and societal norms than what the audience's understanding of morals, ethics, and norms are. And I think that's a really hard challenge. It's a really hard thing to do. And we see it a lot especially if you're writing historical stuff, right? Historical things have different societal norms on how you treat women, how you treat people of different colors, different races, what is your conception of honor, all this kind of stuff. So like in this one specifically, in the show specifically, right? Incest and corporal punishment were two big ones, right? You have, again, the body horrors. There's a scene in like the first episode where Daemon and the guards are just chopping off body parts of anyone and everyone they think has wronged, which is in modern society is not something we would see as acceptable in general. And even the leadership council is like, Daemon shouldn't have done this. But it wasn't necessarily that they were sad about the people losing all their bits. It was more like Daemon took too much control than he should have. We need to rein him in. But anyway, the one that really gets me is the incest, and it's not exactly that there was incest. It was that the way I felt it was portrayed in the show, I have a big problem where I have a problem when I think unhealthy relationships are portrayed in romantic ways. I find that problematic and I don't like it. So Damon, for example.
I was going to ask.
Who
are you talking about?
It is specifically the main character and her uncle. And the problem I have with it is that, you know, you see these multiple years going, and at first she's a child, and he's her uncle, and she's a young child. She's like 14 or something, and he is presumably in his 30s.
I would say 20s.
It's hard to know.
Yeah, it is hard to know. But older.
And he's already freaking flirting with her and setting her up and being a creeper. Fine. Then you get to later, and I had a big problem when they got together, and then there's like, they're on the beach and they have this love scene and there's all this romantic music, and it's like, ooh, like the show was portraying it as if it was a healthy, good relationship, when actuality, even as adults, even if you take the incest out of it, there were times where he was angry and violent towards her. I mean, there were times, even in the last episode, where he grabbed her neck and choked her.
Yeah, he's a bad boy.
Yeah, but that's not sexy to me. I don't like it. And I don't like that, you know, there's even a line about that she says, the main character says, where it's like, we were always made to burn together, I think is what she says. And I think in other shows, the incest, like, for example, the other Game of Thrones, like, the people who write the show are very clearly trying to tell you that incest is bad. But in this show, they're very clearly not telling you that. And in some ways, even romanticizing and making it seem like it's, yeah, like they have a sex scene and it's like got this romantic music to it and beautiful lighting, and it's supposed to be this passionate moment. And I was just like, no, stop, please stop. This man stalked you. He was awful to you. He set you up to manipulate you from a lot of times. Specifically tried to ruin her honor so that she could get married off to him while she was a minor. Like, this is not healthy behavior, and it's not something that I was comfortable with the way that I was uncomfortable with the way that I felt the show portrayed their romance and portrayed their relationship, because I thought it was an incredibly unhealthy relationship portrayed as if it was healthy and as if he was a supportive husband.
There's an interpretation you have that's radically different than mine.
Please.
And that is, when he takes her to the city, I think they make very clear that he's trying to ruin her chance at the throne so he can assail the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Agreed.
more about her being seen. It's more about her depravity. It's more about dethroning her. And he's the one who, like, stops it because she, like, takes over at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, my plan, like, went too far. And then there's this, like, moment of redemption for him. And we can argue whether it's effective or not, but it's definitely a choice where he does end physical contact on his point more than once, because she comes on to him and he stops him. She comes on to him again and he stops him. Or she stops him.
But when he gets caught, the first thing he says is, well, I'll take her. Marry her to me. I don't care that she's ruined. Marry her to me.
Because that, again, his goal is just to get the throne. Like, the goal is to have power. So the entire time, the scoundrel is, like, working towards getting power, working towards getting power, working towards getting power. So the point is that people will do anything to get power, and that, like, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and I really interpreted this.
Didn't have power corrupt them, though. I'm sorry, this is a different topic, Teresa. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I actually took this as these are very, and Game of Thrones explored this very, very well. George R. R. Martin does this really well of exploring morally gray characters. I hear what you're saying about the show portraying their romance as like a romantic that scene was too romantic, but that doesn't mean that we can't be like, wait, you guys, that come on here. And I think so you and I were texting about this, and I do think that there is an element that the producers and the writers put in of let's see what we can do to create buzz. You know, what creates buzz? Incest.
Yep.
Great, let's add some incest to it.
Yep.
I genuinely think that there was some of that to this. And some almost voyeurism to it. So let's take that piece out and let's talk about the relationship, the domination, the growing up together, the abuse, the everything else. I don't think they were saying that it was okay. I think that they were saying that in that moment, those two characters found it to be a romantic thing. That doesn't mean we have to like it. That doesn't mean that we have to not to agree with it. But they're also saying these are morally gray characters. And back to the power thing, because I genuinely think the higher you go, the more power you have, the more morally gray you become.
I agree with that in general, but I don't agree with that in terms of the show. Because okay, let's take the most powerful character for most of the show is the king.
Mm-hmm.
The king in general wasn't that morally gray. He was a good guy.
Because he wasn't on the ascension of power. He had sealed it and no one was challenging it.
Okay, so I think Rhaenyra is Rhaenyra morally gray. What morally gray thing does she do in the show?
Rhaenyra's Daemon.
Rhaenyra or Rhaenyra?
Sorry, actually either. But the main character, the heir.
Rhaenyra.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, to me, she's very morally gray. Yeah. Like, all the affairs with all the different knights and pretending that they're fathers that they aren't, and like a cover marriage that isn't producing heirs. A lot of lies. She lies to her best friend. She has this moment. All she has to do is come clean to her best friend. And that lie on to cover up her licentiousness seeds the entire plot division that creates season 1. Well, it'll create the entire Dance of the Dragons. Had she confided in her and not lied to her, you've got a totally different story.
And let's go back to her having an affair to the point that she had multiple children,
right,
with her lover, and potentially destabilizing the throne.
Mm-hmm.
You know, basically that was just her like, I want some.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I don't agree with that characterization from what I saw. Like, I agree. Yeah, she had affairs. Yeah, she had children from not her husband. But I think it wasn't like a, hey, how's it going type of like, I'm doing this to be lusty over men.
Oh, I thought it was very selfish of her.
I did too.
Interesting.
And I thought it showed the dichotomy between male and females and how our reproductive systems enslave us.
Okay,
right.
So I don't disagree with that idea. That I think is very interesting. but I thought it was she's caught in a catch-22. Once she marries what's his face, and
they agree to a loveless marriage,
and which she didn't have to do.
She kind of did have to do.
She's the queen.
She was not the queen.
She was the queen. She was the queen heir.
Apparent, but had she not involved herself in a series of immoral activity, she would have no need for a redemption marriage. But because she had.
And that's who she had to marry.
Because she jumped her guard's bones. Let's be honest. She went right back. But he was a hottie patati.
Let me get back. So once she essentially just decides to do her duty. right? To marry this guy, Laren, right?
Mhm.
Like, that is in many ways, she is going to quote unquote settle down. She's going to do the right thing. She's not tired, but like, I'm not going to avoid this anymore. I'm going to just do this. But once she does that, right, and she agrees to this loveless marriage, they do try to have kids. They
do.
They
actually do mention
they do
that.
try, and they don't succeed. It isn't happening. And so she is caught then. And I agree, like her previous actions catch her, but at that moment she's caught. And she is expected to produce heirs. Bad things will happen if she doesn't produce kids. Mm-hmm. But she has a husband who can't give her what she needs there.
Right. And she should have, go ahead.
So I read it as, oh, right, she's in a bad situation. And whether she likes or doesn't like the guy she's sleeping with, I don't know, but
she did.
Well, yeah, it became what's more important is to produce kids that are my kids, Targaryen kids, than it is to produce kids that are, it was better to produce Targaryen kids who aren't their father's kids than to not produce any kids at all.
Then why didn't she have an affair with another Valerian?
Targaryen, yeah.
Well, who do you have? There's not that many options.
How do we know that? Well, we don't, and we really are digging into theory here, but we don't know that he didn't have a cousin or...
Well, because they're never invited to banquet, obviously. They all have white hair, we would have noticed.
Honestly, I mean, we are really going into the weeds here.
Yeah,
we are just rewriting the story.
Here is the next question. How can every single Targaryen and Valerian have white hair? And it doesn't matter for everybody else. It doesn't matter if only one of their parents have white hair. They always get born with white hair. And yet for some reason, her kids don't.
Well, that's genetics.
But for genetics, oops, I'm hitting the microphone. For genetics, like everywhere else, it seems to be a dominant trait. And yet for hers, they're not. And it's like...
Well, it would have made it just makes a more interesting story.
I know, absolutely. But it seems like it seems like a continuity error.
No, it seems to me
I don't think so.
It introduces racism into the story.
I mean, there's that too.
So it's a simple author choice to say, let's get people really analyzing bias and prejudice about the way people look.
I mean, let's talk about how, there were Asian communities that had blue-eyed children when there was no blue eyes. That's how genetics works sometimes. It just kind of like goes, I'll take this and I'll take this and look, blue eyes.
Mm-hmm. And then how people react to that. I had literally a cousin who was born with more melanin and somebody who in the family swore it wasn't their child. And they had to have DNA tests to prove that it was.
I thought it would have been more powerful if they would have had someone else in the Targaryen or Valerian line who maybe didn't have white hair that we saw was because right now you have these three who don't have white hair and they're illegitimate. It would have been interesting to have a character that didn't have white hair and was legitimate. That would have been an interesting.
But technically they're not illegitimate if she is the heir apparent. That's only if you're tracing paternal lines, because she is the heiress, so it's her children.
Yeah. You knew what I meant though.
But it's an important change because it assumes like masculine lines versus feminine lines, and so I think he's trying to make that point. That's a deeper point about the feminine characters when you're making even that one shift. So that one shift changes the whole way we think about heirs and heir apparents and stuff like that, right?
I want to change topics slightly because someone has put in our chat, and I know we'll discuss something in our chat, and we could talk about this all day because I feel so strongly.
So listeners, we'll record one and put it up on our podcast, and we will dissect this so much further. I will have to rewatch the show so that we can dissect it so much further.
Let's talk about this other topic that someone brings up, so we give a shout out to our stream. So Sue goes and says the progression of character development is during the time jumps, so it is hard to believe the change for me.
I like that. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really powerful comment that I definitely had a hard time with. And I thought it lost something compared to Game of Thrones with that, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, because you don't know, because when we do time jumps, we change over time. You know, we change over 6 months, we change over 5 years significantly. And we don't know, is this character more moral? Are they not? Where are they more power hungry? Are they given up entirely? So we almost have to do a reset of who is this person?
I think
with every time
especially
jump.
the main character with the 10-year jump.
Yeah.
That was a big jump, and she changed a lot. And we didn't get to see that change. She was just a different person.
Literally,
they changed actors. Yeah,
they changed the actors.
Did you like that opening scene with her where she's like literally giving birth? She has this baby, she's bleeding, and she's
oh my god!
Because I would have quit the show, except that was such a good scene. I was like, well, I've got to see where this goes.
Yeah,
because I didn't like the time jump. I agree with Sue 100%.
And that was, but I loved how they set the power dynamic right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
You have just given birth, and the Silent Sister, I think they were the Silent Sisters, come and they're like, we're taking that baby to the queen. And so Rhaenyra is like, oh my God, no way. I got to get dressed, and is literally leaving a trail of blood behind her after just giving birth. And women, those of you that have given birth know how hard that was. But Rhaenyra was strong enough and powerful enough and needed to go and stand her ground and be like, yes, this is my baby. No, it is not my husband's.
I mean, she didn't say no, it wasn't her husband's.
Well, that was what she was, but that's why she was going, was to protect that baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because she didn't trust her queen.
And why would you?
Oh, well, yeah.
Despite the fact that Queen Alicent didn't do a lot. I found it interesting. Let me rephrase. I found it interesting how in Game of Thrones, the characters in Game of Thrones were a lot more cutthroat than the characters in this show. A lot more cutthroat, a lot more overall, more cutthroat, more manipulative, more devious, more willing to go to extremes to get what they wanted. More power plays, more political intrigue. Let me rephrase. There was still a lot of political intrigue, but more people willing to go outside the bounds of acceptable behavior in Game of Thrones, like kill people.
There were also more men in power. And so this is a lot more, and so we see a little bit some subtle differences in the ruling. And I guess the question would be, do we believe that's true? Like, do we believe that could be a reflection of gender, and was it accurately done, or is it tropey?
Both.
That's really a good answer. Keep talking, please.
Oh, that's all I got. No, I agree. I think it was tropey in that these women are trying to promote their children, are focused on their children, are trying to make sure that their children can ascend the throne, especially Alicent, protecting their children. Again, we have the lactating scene. We have the final scene with Rhaenyra where she has just given birth to a stillborn, and she's got to get out there and take the throne. So that is a little bit tropey, but it's also real too. Women did have to do that. I mean, there were women who it's always been a part of human nature, that women give birth and then keep going. The Red Tent by Anita Diamond, starts with a D, really wonderfully chronicles this from biblical times.
That's powerful. Wow.
Yeah, I think Yes. I agree with Teresa. I think in the show itself, it was frustrating for me at times because I felt like things weren't always happening.
I can see that.
That's
Um,
my husband didn't like too. He thought too much politics for him.
well, it wasn't like, okay, so let's take, for example, one thing I really liked, and then I'll go to like one thing I thought on the flip side wasn't as powerful, was I really actually liked when the woman, God, all their names are the same. Rhaenyra, the older woman who was almost a queen, but then she wasn't. She, she gets free. She gets her dragon. This is a spoiler, right? She gets her dragon, and she completely disrupts the crowning ceremony for the
Oh, that
king.
was awesome.
I know. I was like, oh, I love
It was
the king.
great. It was great. And she makes a decision. She has this big power move, and she could end them all right there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about power, does power corrupt? And does the want of power corrupt? For her, the answer is no. Because she could have had it right there. But she is consistent with her character. She gives up. She decides, I don't want this. The throne isn't for me anymore. It's not what I want anymore. And she is consistent. And when faced with that decision, I loved that she made the decision to not just murder them all.
Although she did murder a bunch of people. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but they're background characters.
Peasants,
right? That's societal norms. They don't matter. They do matter. They do matter.
They were all just wearing red shirts.
What are they called?
Valerians? Her kin.
Her kin. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, she doesn't murder the kin. She doesn't murder the rich people. Right? It's a choice. So that worked really well for me. What maybe like so when you talk about like things happening or not happening, that was a thing that didn't happen that I appreciated. Versus like when there was a whole episode and it was the kid, Aegon was like 2 years old and it was his birthday and they went on a big hunt. And I don't know what the point of that episode was. Like nothing much happened in that episode that I thought
I don't even remember it.
There you go.
It was about the betrothals. So she's at the time where all the men are courting her, and it's a lot of pressure on the king about who will be the heir. And then she goes out to the hunt because she has to show that she is worthy. And they bring the stag to this is the point. This is like actually the pivotal scene for the comment we're talking about. The king, remember they throw ropes on him, on the stag, and then he kills him. But she actually sees the real one that's supposed to be presented, that's like white or whatever, that was supposed to be there, but she lets it go.
Yeah.
So it's showing the two sides of power and how they interact with it.
Beautiful imagery, metaphor, goes nowhere.
Oh, I disagree. I think it'll play out.
Oh, you think we just haven't? Okay, Teresa's trying to wrap us up. You just think it'll go later.
Okay, I mean it. We are going to do we'll do a full deep dive with a recorded episode. So stay tuned. You can jump on our podcast or on our YouTube. But we are not done. We are not done. If people are like, wait, they haven't read my story yet. We're going to go ahead and shift over to First Pages.
Yay! I love First Pages. My favorite part.
So Molly does such a fantastic job of explaining how it is that we critique these pages.
Hello. Welcome again.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
Anyway. So, First Pages, some of our lovely listeners out there have submitted First Pages to some of their works for us to critique. We keep these anonymous. If you are listening in right now and you want to say, oh, that's me, that's wonderful, but we're not going to out you. We participate in a critique method called Even Better If. So we start with what we like, and then we transition to what we think would be even better if you did XYZ. That can be hard at times. to know when you're on the first page, right? We don't know where the story is going from here, but we do our best to give honest, open, valuable critique that is not mean or anything like that, but is real critique. Did I miss anything?
No, you did great.
You don't, by real critique, you mean valuable.
Sorry?
By real critique, we mean valuable, right?
Yeah.
I mean that our critique will help you contemplate your story in a new way,
Yeah.
and maybe have some ideas for style.
I think we've all had instances, all three of us, and maybe you listeners as well, instances where you really want to get better and you really want to know what's going on in your story and how maybe some ideas on what to do, but you give it to people to critique it and all they say is, oh, it's great. Oh, I really liked it. This was nice. And you're like, thank you, but like,
do you have any comments? Get any improvements I can make?
So let's get into it.
Let's get into
see
it.
how
I like
it's
it.
done. Who's
I
gonna
like
read
it.
first?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it when you read.
All right. So this the title of this work is Shadowbound. So
The title.
right?
Yeah, that's a good
Already
title.
have questions.
Mm-hmm.
The air is alive with a strong buzz of magic as shouts ring up and down the thin stretch of grassy land. The sky is blue, with one just barely able to make out the twinkling stars. A large wall of shimmering blue ice blocks much of the battle that can be heard on the other side. The wall itself is manned by a line of wizards in mist-radiating silver armor, standing with their arms calmly raised. 20 meters, comes a shout, causing Amber to turn around. A young man in a purple t-shirt and shorts is addressing a small section of wizards that crackle with the sound of electricity. They each raise an arm to the sky, and somewhere on the other side of the ice wall, They each raise an arm to the sky, and somewhere on the other side of the ice wall, lightning strikes down upon the enemy, followed by screams in the near distance. The storm wizard, who had shouted, has no facial features, with only a generic nose and mouth to give him some form of realism. He turns to an ice wizard who stands apart from the wall defenders, his arms folded, as he watches the wall with a hard scowl. How long will the wall hold? The storm wizard calls. The ice wizard turns his head, his face also given the generic treatment. If the pirates keep this up, not long. A soft snicker sounds, drawing Amber's attention to her left to a faceless female wizard in a short red dress. Behind her is a line of fire wizards throwing fireballs over the wall. They should burn before that ever happened, she comments. And then without warning, the scene pauses. The sounds abruptly silence himself, and the wizards freeze in an instant. The demonstration is over already? Amber can't help but think.
Great world building. I
Yeah.
love how original. I'll start with positive comments because I love the world building. I love how it's something I can see and relate to. I can see the wall. I can see the fight. I'm so grateful for the detail of the purple shirt and the shorts. I do need the author to know that tells me it's modern day. So with that kind of description, you're putting. I'm seeing the battle that people on the other side. So then the pirates. Then I had questions about that because to me, if you're wearing a purple shirt and shorts, like that's putting me kind of in the modern day wardrobe. So if that's good, if that's what you want, then that's awesome. But if the pirates are more historic, maybe a little more help with that would be awesome. But my big strength right now is I think world building and the uniqueness of your world. So cool. I love all the different wizards and their abilities. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, I actually loved, because I had skimmed this one before choosing it. And I'd missed the purple t-shirt. And to me, that would be enough to where I'm like, it's wizards. There's there's someone with a purple t-shirt.
I like that.
Wow, I have questions. I'm going to keep reading. So to me, that really turned it into more of a like, okay, all right, this is unique. This is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked that.
I really liked how the author here draws you in with your senses right away. Like, it's not just the visuals. The visuals are there. They're important. But also, like, you get sounds right away. You even get, like, kind of a touch, right? Like, the air is alive with a strong buzz of magic. To me, that implies, like, static electricity. So the fact that you're starting with that sense, a lot of people start with vision, and I like where you're starting here. I like that you're drawing us in with details I like, but wasn't like, I don't find them to be overly cliche. It's not what I was expecting, and in a good way.
I like how clear that makes the genre too, by the way. That's really nice. Since we're doing fantasy, obviously, from House of Dragon, it's really nice that like from the very beginning we're in the fantasy world, and so our expectation is clear. So then we're a lot more excited to see the wizards because we're in a fantasy world, so we're not having to wonder what genre we're in. You know, it's nice, really nice.
Yeah. I also, did you guys pick up on early on? I was like, whoa, maybe this is a dream. Yeah, I noticed that early on, which I thought was well done, if that is the direction that it's going.
So for me, my even better if, and maybe this comes in the next sentence or the next paragraph, is I want to know if, so it starts with like the faceless features kind of thing. And I got confused on if that was like literally they just have generic features, right? They're not very interesting, right? They have faces, but they're just not very interesting. Or if these people like literally don't have faces.
Only a nose and mouth with the storm.
Yeah, and like right? No eyes or eyebrows or face wrinkles. And I got a little, I just didn't know, right? I don't know yet. And I don't know which direction, what you're trying to go. So a little bit more clarity. Or like at the very end, you talk about the scene pauses. The sounds abruptly silence themselves. And I'm really excited to know what comes next. Is it just like the person is watching this on TV and they've paused the TV? Or is it, like you said, a dream? Or is it this character is about to pass out and they're overwhelmed and, you know, they've like, they're about to go down? I don't know. And that's not necessarily, I want to know. I want to keep reading to find out.
And I was actually thinking, because I initially was like, maybe this is a dream. And the purple t-shirt and shorts is also making me think video game. Yeah, where you can Sims. Where you can like be like, I want this guy in a purple t-shirt and it's a wizard with a crazy hat, and then I'm gonna get a traditional wizard, and then we're gonna get somebody in a bikini. Yeah, and then we're gonna get somebody in a bikini running around.
Someone else is dressed like a
wait, I'm gonna write that.
That leads me to my even better if. I know on the first page that we have so much to do with world building. I feel like world building is such an important thing, and I feel that's masterfully done here. But I also believe on a first page, it's really important to create an emotional connection with the protagonist. I am assuming that Amber is the protagonist. I don't know how Amber feels about the faceless wizards. She's on the side of the wizards, and she's like a TV. She's saying this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But I don't know if she finds it comical that he has to do a nose and just a mouth, or if that's still kind of unnerving to her. She's been with them for a while, but it still looks weird. Or if she's one of them, like she could technically be another wizard. And I personally, to bond with this story and to keep wanting to read, I would like to know what side of the battle I'm on and a little bit more about how my protagonist feels about her situation, so I can empathize and get more like emotionally invested in her journey.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Should we go to our second, or did you have more,
yeah.
Teresa?
Teresa didn't have hers yet, though.
I think my only even better if these are characters, the Storm Wizard, the Ice Wizard, Amber, and everyone else, this is a lot of characters to introduce. And I always feel like early on, and there's definitely exceptions, there's ways to do this, but the fewer characters you can introduce in the beginning, the better, because you're trying so hard to do the world building, introduce the main character, do the create that emotional connection and everything else. Go ahead, Morgan.
I was just going to ask, what age do you think this is for?
Good
because
question.
How many characters you introduce on a first page is such a genius point. Really, and this really could be young. This could be middle grade. And we don't have enough about the protagonist to know really what genre we're at. which would make a big difference in how many characters you can give us how quickly, right? Or at
That's a
least
good
that's
point.
my understanding of readers.
Yeah, that's a good point. But bottom line, really, really good.
Yeah,
Really
it's
great
amazing.
world building. Fascinating with the purple shirt. There's a demonstration. Something definitely would keep me turning the page, which is the key of a first page. Well, not the only key, but it's one of the main keys of the first page.
And good
Will
job
you
with
keep
dualism.
reading?
Good job with the ice and fire and doubling down twice on the first page. I see that craft move and I love it. And it's really well done here.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Next page.
All right,
I like
next
it.
page. This one also fantasy, also called My Confession.
The eyebrows.
All right. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Didn't think I would ever do this, but it just happened. I murdered someone. I will not say because I don't even want to think about it. It just hurts me that I did this because they were an innocent person. They did not deserve to die, and I regret it. How it happened is when I was thinking, I just started to think about death. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I just broke. I snapped and I grabbed a something and I went to the park. I was just looking around and then I found someone. They looked sad. I stared at them all night. And then when she tried to leave, I ran at them and I came and I sliced their throat and I left right away. I was happy for the first time in a long time. But as the next day went, I was haunted for the whole day. I hated it. So I told the police and now I'm telling you. So that is why I am writing you.
Wow. Very visceral.
Mm-hmm. A lot going on in this first page.
Well, we know the genre.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
they say fantasy, but this reads as horror, suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it goes to fantasy, later, but right now I'm like, a lot. I'm reminded again of we just did Poe recently,
Mm-hmm.
and it has some reminiscence of that.
I think one thing they really do well. I was just reading James Baldwin's very famous short story called Sunny Blues, right? It's the classic short story, and it's about basically a brother who finds out his other brother overdosed on heroin and is in jail and all this stuff. And he finds it out in the newspaper and he's reading it. And it starts with this conversational tone, and the tone here that's being used at the very beginning, it's very conversational, very inviting, very relaxed, really invites the reader to go, okay, we're having a conversation. You're talking with me. And I think that's a nice approach to get someone, especially when you're telling a story. Like, I feel like a person is confiding in me. And I really like that approach. I think that works for this writer's style really well.
That's actually what I love as well. I love the style and the tone in this. Like this author, you have a real voice. This is a real like Morgan said, it's approachable. It is easy to get sucked in, and it feels like you're communicating directly to the person. And that is a hard thing for a lot of authors. So great job.
Yeah, you could really see what was happening, even though there wasn't a lot of visual stuff about like, oh, the park, the moon was shining down in the park and the trees were whispering and everything else. This was as I said before, this was very visceral, very in your face, very dramatic, very linear. We know exactly what happened, how it happened. There's a good emotional component in this. Yeah, next day I was haunted.
I think my even better if is we have got the reader, he might be insane or she might be insane, the protag. We're not sure what's going on. The beats are a little difficult to follow. The escalation at the park, where you just go from watching them, or the main character goes from watching them to actually killing them, happens too fast for me on the page, where I think it would be stronger to either let them really sit and watch that person and get into the details. And then if there is some instability with the right, the protagonist telling the story, then maybe you could make the world like a little unstable and get it a little out of focus, and then have the event happen, or something that kind of builds us into it, because so then our reaction isn't, because it's almost unbelievable because I'm not built up for it enough. So my reaction was kind of like I squealed and stepped back. So I was like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? That was too for me, it was just a little too fast to believe.
So the one
Go ahead.
One thing I would kind of challenge on this one is that it's a letter. And I actually kind of disagree, because I feel like for a letter, this is perfect.
Oh, okay.
But I would want to know, I would want there to be an explanation pretty soon, because we're using Dear Mom and Dad, so I'm going to assume this is a young character. I would want to know pretty soon, do we have a reliable narrator or not? And is this character insane? Because they seem insane.
Yes. And what's that look like? Did it black out? Yeah.
All right. For me, my even better if is this is going to sound not that exciting, but because I'm reading it here, I really encourage the author to hone their craft in a way to make it work for you more. So grammar is not that exciting. Punctuation, those kind of things are not that exciting. But you want to tell you have a story. You have a unique point of view, and you have a unique voice that deserves to be told. And your story deserves to be out there. And grammar, sentence structure, those type of things, while not exciting or sexy, those are what's going to allow you to tell the story in the best way possible. So I encourage you to really, and reach out on our Discord or something like that. I can give more specifics or something like that. But there's things that you can do here to really elevate it to the next level if you get those things right. And that will make people even more drawn into your story. And it'll make it more accessible, and you can focus on the storytelling and draw people into what you have to say.
And it's not that hard once you get started. And
it isn't.
I love what you're saying, Molly, because it made me think of like little question marks and like high heels and exclamation points and suits and like all this like sexy punctuation. Like I was stressing out the punctuation.
We now need a t-shirt that has like sexy look punctuation. Ooh, we've been trying to come up with t-shirts forever.
Yeah, so I love that. So I'm like, how do I make punctuation sexy? Like, I love it. But no, that's always good. The fundamentals are important.
Yeah. And I think this works really great for a letter, right? Because in a letter, you can, someone is writing the letter, so they maybe don't have to follow the rules of punctuation 100%, right? So a good rule of thumb, especially in a letter, right? In a letter, is really think about when someone is reading this out loud, where do you want them to pause, stop, take a breath? And where do you want them to accent, ask a question, right? So if you want someone to pause, you put a comma. You want someone to stop for a second, you put a period. You want them to ask a question, right? That's the question mark. You want the inflection to go up. You want them to accelerate towards the end and have a big thing. So like this is like really, and especially again, those rules aren't hard and fast when you're doing precise grammatical work for a paper or something like that. But it's a good place to start when you're talking about like an informal letter.
I will challenge on that one.
Please.
I would also say, because that perhaps the grammar, spelling, and everything else is a decision made that tells us a great deal about this character. And if that's the case, let's punch into the insanity a little bit more, punch into the age a little bit more. Because I think if this was intentional, there's something there. But I think Yeah,
Sorry.
I think, but I would love to see, if that's the case, this would be so much fun to edit. Holy cow. Because choosing the words, choosing the misspellings, choosing the grammatical errors, choosing the crazy sentence structure would be
Tells
a
us-
lot of fun.
tells us about their background, tells us about
Mhm.
meaning, what part of the country they come from, how much education they've had, like,
Their
maybe their
age.
access, their age, what
Mhm.
types of words they're using. So I love what you're saying, Teresa, that choice in a letter tells us that, is telling us maybe something about the character's lack of education or lack of attention to detail, for example. Or, maybe they're not a perfectionist because they don't everything doesn't have to be a certain way. And so that's really cool. I love that point.
That being said,
Intentionality.
intentionality. That being said, you could not do this in a whole novel. It's too exhausting.
Yeah.
There are some people, okay, I'm going to take it back. There are some, I'm sure that there are some authors out there that have done something like this for an entire novel. I would say it wouldn't be a commercial or a mainstream novel.
It would
if
be
that's the
very
case.
challenging.
Yeah.
Isn't All the Pretty Horses, didn't they just like throw punctuation to the wind and do like and just like run on sentences through it?
I haven't read it.
And then Monster, I know, does this through the whole book, and it's got some, but it doesn't do it enough. It's very decision, like there's just certain words that are misspelled.
Mhm.
There's certain mistakes and punctuations that are done in anger. So certain emotions cause certain issues to come up. So what they do is they color the manuscript where, like, when they're angry, they make these certain errors in punctuation.
Oh.
When they're kind or when they're loving, they make these certain errors.
So again, being deliberate.
Yep, exactly. That is the key. All right.
The author, sorry.
So, well, it's to the author now. You have to decide how you want to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
And we're excited to listen to it. Or
This
read
is
it.
so fun. Thank you for sharing your stuff with us.
Do we have anything in the chat?
Just people saying hi. Hello.
Hi. And bye. Anything else?
Plug, if you want your first page read, go ahead and submit to us. You thought this was great. You can find the submission stuff on our website, www.semisagesofthepages.com. If you disagreed with me and you thought House of the Dragon was great, put a comment down below. If you agreed with me and thought it was, put a comment down below. Because then I get to throw it in these ladies' face. No.
And both. And you can disagree with us.
And you can be both. You can be in the
Absolutely.
middle. You can say, I liked this. I wish they would have done this better. But let us know. And like Teresa said, we might do a whole episode where we kind of dig
Not
into
might.
more
I
of this.
promised it.
She
Well,
did.
She did.
I promised it.
So
we
you're
are
gonna-
going to do it.
You're
And
going
when Teresa promises, we deliver.
Yeah. So if there's a subject you want us to cover, you
Mhm.
want us to talk about those time skips. You want us to talk about the incest. You don't want us to talk about those things. You want to talk about leprosy. You
or
let us know.
dragons.
Or dragons. Bad
Dragons.
CGI water.
Dragons.
Killing your kin.
Dragons.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whatever, you'll help us focus our discussion. So really, it would
Good luck.
helpful on the Discord here, anywhere. Let us know where you want us to focus our upcoming decision, because we can't make 5 episodes about House of Dragon.
Oh, sure we could, but we won't.
We won't.
We didn't even get to what Teresa and I think of this one, Molly. Because you're just assuming we like it. You know that, right? Like, you haven't actually asked us.
Now
We will have a further discussion later. So
Yeah.
what is going to be,
You'll have to
our
tune in.
what's our next live?
Our next
so
live
exciting.
is in 2 weeks. And what's the topic? I don't remember what the topic is.
What we do in shadows.
Oh, are we doing What We Do in the Shadows? I love that show. So if you guys are interested in comedy, horror, all of that kind of stuff, join in 2
Vampire
weeks.
nightclubs.
Blood
Oh, no.
sprinklers. All right. Otherwise, wrapping this up. Thank you all for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Do the
Thank
like,
you.
do the subscribe,
Thank
contact
you.
us, all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, we had a great time this evening. Hopefully you did as well.
Good job, Molly and Teresa.
Bye.
Yay!